us ahead of him. Vivek, I wish you all the success in the world, but the only way that your presidential campaign will succeed, or anyone else's, is if the money is taken out of Washington. Period.
Yep.
Because as long as the money goes there, the narrative can be controlled there. And if the money doesn't go there, who wants to go there? Nobody wants to be a part of that. Why? Because there's no power in that anymore. And so when you talk about getting rid of departments, I'm not quite sure. I mean, I understand from a legalistic point of view how you could do that, how you pull that off. We see where I'm not an advocate necessarily for the way that President Trump has interacted, but I understand that he had to make it bloody to expose the wound, but you can see where he's at. So where will you be at? And I apologize if that was a
that was
all over the place.
That was honest. That was very honest, sir. I want to say a few things in response to what's your name? Lynn? Yeah, you told me to be started. So I'll say a few things. One is the hubris of thinking that you're going to, just because, the old expression goes, if you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. With a politician, here's what this is an uncomfortable thing to say right now, but I think we got to say it. It's what you said, sir. What was your name again? Willie. Willie said this before. It's a brave thing to say, and it's the right thing to say. The temptation is just pass some law, paper it over, and say we did something in response to this. We don't even know exactly the first thing that's happened, but you mark my words, tomorrow, if not later today, you're going to hear calls for stop the guns. Right? That's the problem. Sweeping under the rug this real ailment at the heart and soul of our nation and our culture that has spread to the entire next generation and to the unit of the family, the loss of purpose. No, forget about all that. We're just going to play whack-a-mole because that's what we know how to do. That's a false hubris, right? It's a belief that, almost a belief that we are God, that we can ultimately control this outcome without getting to the root cause of it. And so I think that's the wrong approach, right out of the gate, to knee-jerk policy reactions in response to a tragedy, or often some have been some of our worst policies of all. I'll address, it doesn't feel to me like the moment where I feel like this is the right moment to do it, but I'll just tell you, you asked a question about can we actually go in there and shut down much of that federal bureaucracy where the money's flowing. My short answer to you is yes. I respect Donald Trump and what he did for this country. He rolled over that law. We need a president who's bringing the pesticide, and on another occasion, and maybe even on a different occasion, later today or this week, I can go into that. This isn't the time and place for that. But I do think that's what's necessary. Remove the money from not only Washington, D.C., but from this broken political process. And most of the way this Iowa caucus, they're trying to make it work, is just, who puts up the super PACs. They give them some lines to read. They'll show up on TV. It's a 30-second script. Whoever puts the most money behind them wins the thing. That's the way our politics works. I don't think it should work that way. But I also don't think that it works just based on playing whack-a-mole with respect to one law that we check a box and think we solved the problem either. I'll tell you something. When Reagan left office in January of 1989, now I don't watch inauguration speeches. They're full of hot air, false smoke, and unfulfilled promises. But I pay attention to the farewell speeches. Why? Because that's when they have nothing to lose, right? They're not in this. They're not in this to sell you something. They're in this to just tell you the truth. Most of them are ready to leave and are ready to actually, maybe sometimes even for the first time, be truly, brutally honest with you. Reagan, when he left office in 1989, of all the things he could have boasted about, right? If this was an inauguration speech or a re-election speech, he would have told you about how they brought us to the near end of stagflation, brought us out of the economic doldrums we were in, brought us to the near end of the Cold War. He didn't mention any of that in his final speech when he left office. The thing he said when he left office in January of 1989, the very last thing he said to the American people as a president, was that he was proud to revive our national character that we lacked when he took office in 1981. I think it's the most honest thing he said. And he was a good leader for this country, but the most honest thing he ever said is, I think that was the thing he was most proud of in this country. And so I thank you for your kind words. I think a lot about what do I want to say when I leave, not now on the campaign trail, but when I leave in January 2033. What do we want to say we actually did for this country? There's a whole long list of everything else we'll say on other occasions about the policies we want to pass. I think when we leave, it's not going to be any of those things that we tell you we did. It's going to be reviving our national character and answering who we are. And tell you that Apoorv and I and our family, we did our part, but we're even more proud to watch coaches and parents and Americans across this country who stepped up to do their part too. And you're right, we do wake up to a life where it feels like we're all going through the aimless motions, the aimless passage of time, drained with that sense of apathy, that rudderless sense of direction, doing what our iPhones tell us to do on a given day. And I think one of the things that grounds me, and I'll share this with all of you today, is my faith. I don't think you should in any way apologize for talking about yours. I'll tell you about mine. And I left it for much of my late teens and early 20s. Came back to it as an adult. I'm Hindu. It's a different faith background than people who've run for U.S. president, but I'll tell you about my faith. I believe there's one true God. I believe He puts each of us here for a purpose. It's not being done by us. That's the other way you talked about it. It's not being done by us. It's being done through us. I think each of us, every one of us here, every one of us as human beings, we have our own unique God-given gifts. And I think it's our job to look inside and look deep and ask ourselves, what are those gifts that God has given me? And how do I use those gifts in the short time we're given as a coach? As somebody who's taking care of psychiatrically ill people, as somebody who's a business owner, as somebody who's a parent. How do I use those unique God-given gifts to do what's right in the short time that we're given? And for me, it's my faith that gives me my freedom. It's that what gives me my sense of purpose. And in periods of my life where I lacked it, I did feel like that rudderless ship as well. When you think it's, for me at least, when I think it's being done by me, that's actually constraining. Right? That's a source of constraint. When I remind myself it's being done through us, that's what gives me my freedom. And no matter how flawed, we're all equal. Because God resides in each of us. We're equal in the eyes of God. But to me, those are some of the same ideals enshrined. The ideals that I was raised in, those are the same ideals that I see come alive when I read the Ten Commandments. We don't talk about that anymore. I wonder whether we would have the same rate of school shootings if we had the Ten Commandments still something that we were able to talk about from our schools to our own communities. There's one true God. Don't take His name in vain. Observe the Sabbath. Honor your parents. Don't kill. Don't lie. Don't cheat. Don't steal. Don't commit adultery. Don't covet. These are not fashionable values today. I do think that they're the values that the nation was founded on. They're values that, even though I come from a different faith, very familiar values and the values I was raised in. And I think we would do well to revive that shared sense of purpose too. It just so happened we didn't, it's a little bit. We were planning on something different, but my friend Adam, and maybe I think we have a minute left, Adam, before we're going to wrap. But maybe you can leave us on an uplifting note. Adam is somebody who's encountered. He's a friend of mine. He's been for 10 years. He came here to be with us today in the campaign for a couple of days. You encountered some adversity in your life. It was crippling. You overcame it. Maybe you want to share a few words about what got you through the trauma that you went through and whatever positive this community can take away from that in a day like this. I'd love to give them that opportunity. So say a few words, Adam, before we wrap.
So I flew out